In today's video, I finally succeed in turning these coins into a wristwatch. And let me just tell you, the result is amazing. It took so many attempts, so many failures, so many restarts, but in the end I think it turned out pretty awesome. So stick around to the end to see an amazing result. But first, we gotta go back to the beginning, where this project all started about 6 months ago, when I saw this 1 Rand coin. And I thought to myself, it's pretty cool, I want to preserve this, so I figured I'd refine this into pure silver, and from there make a silver watch case using a custom alloy. So I smelted this down and I made a nice blob of silver alloy, and then changed it and formed it and ground it into a nice watch shape. Everything was cool. I made all the parts. I made the bezel, the case back, and then I realized that there's a really small little thing right there. It's a crack, and this was across the lugs, which meant that if it broke, the watch would be useless, and so I figured it would be best to restart. This time, I'm taking a different approach. I'm gonna use a more modern 1 Rand coin and some 5-cent coins, and when these get stacked together and fused together under high heat conditions, they form a metal called mokumegane, which is similar to Damascus steel, except it's made from nickel and copper. I think I failed about 4 times doing this because I wasn't getting the material hot enough, but eventually I got it right and I turned this into a rough square shape, and then I drew it out by hammering on it into a square shape and then a bar shape, and then eventually twisted it to reveal the pattern. This makes it easier for you to see the different colors and textures that the mokumegane can show. If you want to make things in life, you should make things. It's very inspiring to see people who like something and go for it. But if you want to make things and learn from me, I wouldn't suggest it. I tend not to do things the way it's supposed to be done. And sometimes it works, most of the time it doesn't work. But there are a lot of YouTube videos out there that can teach you properly how to make watches, how to service watches, and I'll link them in the description below. I finally got this watch case machined, and it's time to move on to the actual watch. I plan to rebuild this movement so it actually works, because I love the way that it looks. I used to take this movement and use the good parts from this, as well as the one that I just showed you in here, and to make one good movement from it. Step 1 is going to be strip this watch apart, clean every component, fix any components, and then reassemble the movement. It's pretty straightforward, but the parts are super tiny and it can be quite challenging at first. If you like this style of content, please let me know, so that I can then make more content like this, where you can go into detail about the watch movement and how it's made and assembled. And if you like this style of content, you should check out Wristwatch Revival. He has a lot more detail and is a lot better at this than me. And he was one of the guys I first started watching when I started servicing and restoring watches. Once everything is disassembled, I wash every component, rinse it off and dry it, and I start reassembling this from the ground up. And yes, water can rust watch movements, but as long as you dry it afterwards, you're gonna be fine. I used to have this really cool watch cleaning machine. It was called Universal Watch Cleaning Machine. I think so, I can't remember. But it was really nice and really cool, except that half of it was broken. So I tried restoring it, eventually I sold it, but when I think back, I should have kept it and actually used it to clean watches, because it can save a lot of time. I make sure that everything has some oil or grease placed on it in places where it's needed, because over time it ensures that there's no wear and tear on the movement components. And these parts are tiny. What you just saw me place inside the watch was the pallet fork, and that part's super tiny but essential for regulating the oscillation of the watch. And that is a thing of beauty. Back to the case, I need to drill a few holes in this case so that the screws for the case back and bezel can actually screw into the case. I'm just going to drill these out and then tap them with a 1.8mm tap. These are quite tiny and fragile and they tend to break super easily, so I'll just take my time and cruise through it, and from there I can start looking at the bezel and the case back of the watch. When we left off, the bezel was more or less done, but I still had to make a case back. So I'm going to use some forged carbon for this. At the time it sounded like a good idea, because I didn't have the time or effort or patience to make a fresh batch of Moku Megane just for the case back, so I used the compression mold and made a forged carbon fiber case back. The only issue is that I hate it so much. I don't know what it is. I think it's the color and the texture of the carbon fiber on the external side of the watch with the Moku Megane, but I just don't like the way it looks, so I will change this in future, but I think it's going to do pretty well for now. The way this works is that instead of layering on weaved carbon fiber, you take individual strands with some resin and then use a mold that compresses those strands into the shape you want to create the forged carbon piece, hence the name forged carbon fiber. It's quite an easy process, takes a bit of getting used to, but you can end up with some really high quality structural parts this way. After drilling in the holes for the screws, I gave this thing a quick finish and started fitting in the bezels and the case back glasses, although I did forget to film that. For the dial of this watch, I'm sticking it to carbon fiber. This was the plan originally. It's what made me end up using the same material for the case back, but I actually like the way this one turned out. Instead of having a compression mold, I just had it on two pieces of acrylic because I wanted a nice thin sheet that I can use as the base of the dial. I cut out a circle from this, but I still needed a few ways of actually telling the time, so I wanted to use a old dial with some indices. This was kinda stupid because I ended up forming a ring and sanding away the markers completely and then laser engraving it, because I didn't like the way the old ones looked. Once again, do as I say, not as I do. You can see the old dial pins where it attaches to the movement, and here you can see me sanding away the original dial markers. I also took some time to trim out the edges and make this a lot thinner, because I wanted to look as it's complementing the carbon fiber and not cover it up completely. So this went great. I liked it. It was awesome, but then I didn't like it and I hated it. So I restarted it again and I used copper this time. The color was better and I think I needed a bit of practice to get it right. But this time I had it fully laser engraved and it looked awesome. All I had to do was thin out this carbon fiber disc and it would basically be ready for the watch. Finishing this was quite difficult, but I think it was worth it. It's finally time to assemble this watch. I'm very satisfied with the dial itself and I'm installing the hands here. I may have forgotten quite a bit of videoing and filming for this part of the watch, so please forgive me for that. But it's time to case up this watch and put in the case back and the other components. I love the way this movement looks, but I'm using a 3D printed spacer because I forgot my case screws. I don't know where I put them. It's lost. It's somewhere in the workshop. A lot of things went wrong with this watch. It took me forever, and I wanted to give up so many times, but I'm very glad I actually stuck with it. I love the way this turned out, but there's a few imperfections that I'm not happy with, so I'm going to change that and make it better, like the case back for example. But it's time to put a strap on this watch and finally call it done for now, because it's been an absolutely epic journey over the last 6 months.